Soon the bell rang. Hearing Dr. Dr. Grumpky's footsteps coming closer and closer, I felt my stomach twitching and squeezing. The door opened and she came into class. I saw her lips wet. She must have drunk it all. She looked around the class and we stayed still, holding our breath. She walked towards the podium and I quickly wrote a note, folded it in a half, and passed it around. When the last person got it, Dr. Dr. Grumpky ran and snatched it. "Cranky Pants drank my gastric? What is this? Who wrote this?" She hit the desk with her weapon. All my classmates seemed so scared that they even forgot to breathe. Nobody answered, and she got furious. She yelled more loudly while poking us in the belly one by one with her weapon. "Who is it that wrote this? What is gastric?" Then she stopped at my desk and everybody gasped. She glared at me for a minute. She was shivering with anger. I could hear her grinding her teeth. "Of course it's you. Edison, I know it's you. You. She panted out those words but couldn't continue. Her face was becoming red and she started sneezing. Achoo! 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 Everybody stared at her. She was getting redder and sneezing harder and harder. My gastric was working well, and it was Jacqui chili that made her red and sneeze. Jacqui chili is said to be 10,000 times more spicy than Thai chili, and is from somewhere in Asia. One of Mum's friends gave her some powder for cooking, but Mum never used it. She couldn't stop sneezing, and her nose was dripping. Her eyes were red, and tears were flowing down. She span around, trying to cover her mouth and grabbing her belly. None of my classmates were laughing, as they were still scared. Suddenly, Dr. Dr. Grumpky stopped sneezing. "Oh no! Was that all that worked?" My secret recipe didn't seem to be working well. I started shivering with nerves, but kept watching her. She stood straight and glared at me. My eyes almost popped out in shock. I tried not to, but couldn't help shivering with nerves. Her nose was still dripping, and tears from her red eyes were still flowing down her burning red face. Then she grasped her weapon tightly, lifted it high, and walked towards me. "Edison, you disgusting little brat!" I saw her weapon and then her face getting more and more red and shiny. I didn't move until she came right up next to me. I knew she was going to hit me with it. I bit my lips not to scream. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction, but I couldn't help myself shivering even harder. I closed my eyes and waited for the hit with my fist clenched tightly, but it never came. I opened my eyes and saw her face even more red and shiny, like a Chinese lantern. Dad's shoe polisher worked, and her body swelling like a balloon. Mum's yeast powder that I made super strong was working well. Her weapon was dropped on the floor. She tried to look down at her body, but because her neck was swollen so big, she couldn't bend it at all. She started screaming. "Ah!" Her her scream echoed and suddenly stopped. Instead, she started burping and farting at the same time. Still nobody moved or laughed. Yuck, it smelled terrible. Someone started giggling, and soon everybody burst out laughing, grabbing their nose. It was some of Dad's GAS stuff, and soda powder, I guess. It worked a lot better than the farty mix. The whole class was excited to see my gastric actually working. They clapped their hands and pounded their desks like drums. Some grabbed their stomachs, laughing hard. Poor Dr Grumpky, she seemed confused and lost. She looked around with her eyes rolling hard. And that wasn't all. The balloon-like Dr Grumpky started bouncing like a ping-pong ball. Yep, it was ping-pong ball powder. Bouncing harder and harder, she kept hitting the ceiling of the classroom with her head. Ouch! 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 Ah! She bounced out of the window and bounced away higher and higher, further and further, with a shiny red face in a balloon-like body. She wouldn't feel too much pain, though, because I put in some painkillers too. So, my gastric worked very well. We all laughed and laughed, hurrayed and hurrayed. Suddenly, the door opened. Everybody gasped and watched the door. It was my mum. She came in, looking surprised. Everybody breathed out, feeling relieved. Mum quickly looked around and found me. "What's going on? Where's your teacher?" "Mum, she's gone away. You just missed her." We all looked out the window, waving a farewell to her. You must be wondering what happened to Dr Grumpky after all. Well, she ended up at Springtown Hospital that night, and she is getting some behaviour therapy now. She needed some help anyway. How am I doing? Well, I'm in the principal's office now, thinking about what I've done wrong today. I think I need another recipe. Another good one. Shh! Keep this secret.